You are the only animal on Earth that cries from emotions. Not pain, not irritation, not something stuck in your eye, but emotions. Dogs don't do this. Elephants don't do this. Chimpanzees, the closest living relatives to humans, they don't do this either. In the entire animal kingdom, across hundreds of thousands of species, only one produces tears in response to an emotion. And that's us. Which raises a question that sounds much simpler than it actually is. Why? Why do humans cry? And why, out of every creature that has ever lived on this planet, are we apparently the only ones who do it? To understand why this is strange, you first have to understand what a tear actually is. Your eyes produce tears constantly. Every time you blink, a thin layer of moisture protects your cornea from drying out. That's a reflex. Fish have something similar. So do reptiles. Even some sharks produce tears, though not for reasons that would move you. Then there are reflex tears, the kind that happen when something gets in your eye, or when you're cutting an onion. Those are purely mechanical. A signal travels from your eye to your brain. Your brain sends a chemical response back, and your tear glands react. No emotion involved. No thought required. And then there are emotional tears. And those are completely different. Scientists have found that emotional tears have a different chemical composition than reflex tears. They contain stress hormones, chemicals your body produces during anxiety, grief, and pain. When you cry from sadness or loss, or overwhelming joy, your body is literally expelling those hormones through your eyes. Think about that for a second. Crying isn't just a reaction. It's a biological release valve. The feeling of relief after a good cry isn't in your imagination. It's chemistry. Researcher William Fry spent years studying emotional tears and found that people consistently reported feeling better after crying. Not because their problem was solved, because something physically changed inside them. You literally cry your stress out. But that still doesn't explain where emotional crying came from, or why humans do it when nothing else does. To find the origin, you have to go back to the very beginning. And by beginning, I mean the first hours of your own life. Human babies cry more than the infants of almost any other primate. A newborn chimpanzee is quiet by comparison. It clings to its mother, makes small sounds, but produces nothing like the sustained, high-pitched crying of a human infant. Human babies are different. A newborn can cry for hours. It cries when it's hungry, when it's cold, when it wants to be held, when it's uncomfortable, and it keeps crying until something happens. And here's the thing. That strategy works perfectly. A crying baby gets fed, gets held, gets warm, gets exactly what it needs. There's nothing subtle about it. A human infant is running one of the most effective signaling strategies in the animal kingdom, and it works every single time. But babies grow up. Most behaviors that were useful in infancy disappear as we get older. You don't crawl anymore. You don't put everything in your mouth. You don't need someone to carry you. So why do adults keep crying? Charles Darwin noticed this problem in 1872. He spent years studying human and animal expressions, and in his book on the subject, he wrote about adult emotional crying with what you can only describe as genuine confusion. He could explain infant crying. That made evolutionary sense. He could explain the mechanics of how tears were produced. That made sense too. But adult emotional crying? Adults who wept at grief, at joy, at beauty, at nothing visible at all? That baffled him. Because from a survival standpoint, adult emotional crying looks like a catastrophically bad idea. Crying blurs your vision at exactly the moment you might need to see clearly. It makes you loud when silence could matter. It announces to everyone nearby that something is wrong with you. And in a world full of predators and rivals, something is wrong with me is not the signal you want to broadcast. Darwin never fully solved the problem, but modern researchers have. And the answer changes how you think about why humans survived at all. Here's what Darwin missed. He was thinking about crying as something that happened despite evolution. A flaw, a malfunction from infancy that adults never fully outgrew. But vulnerability in humans is a survival strategy. Humans are a cooperative species. We didn't survive because we were stronger than other animals. We weren't. We didn't survive because we were faster. We definitely weren't. We survived because we worked together better than anything else that had ever lived. A single human alone in the prehistoric wilderness would die quickly. A group of humans cooperating could survive almost anything. And this is where crying becomes interesting. When you cry in front of another person, something happens to that person. Their mirror neurons fire. Their body releases oxytocin, the same hormone involved in bonding between parents and children. They feel a pull to help, to comfort, to do something. The sight of another person's genuine distress creates an almost irresistible urge to respond. Crying is not a weakness signal. It's a connection signal. In a species that survived through cooperation, the ability to signal, "I need help," to people who cared about you wasn't embarrassing. It was how the system worked. It was how people survived injuries that would have been fatal alone. It was how people made it through grief without becoming lost in it. The groups that were best at responding to each other's distress, the ones where people actually helped when someone was struggling, those groups survived better than the ones where they didn't. And over thousands of generations, the humans who could cry and trigger that response and others quietly pass that ability on. Here's a detail that makes this even stranger. Humans cry significantly more when other people are around. If you're sitting alone watching a movie and a sad scene plays, you might feel something, a tightness in your chest, a heaviness. But put another person beside you on the same couch, and suddenly your eyes fill. The scene didn't change. The only thing that changed was the audience. Scientists have studied this in real settings. People consistently suppress crying when they are alone and release it in the presence of others. Which means on some level your brain already understands exactly what crying is for. It's a signal, and signals only need to fire when someone is watching. But none of that explains the strangest thing humans do. Humans cry at things that aren't real. We cry at movies. We cry at songs. We cry at books, at characters who never existed, at stories about people we will never meet, at events that never happened. A well-written novel can make a grown adult cry alone in a quiet room over a person or writer invented entirely in their imagination. No other animal does anything remotely like this. Your dog can sit beside you while you watch a heartbreaking scene. It doesn't cry. It might notice that you seem upset and rest its head on your leg. But the film itself means nothing to it. The characters mean nothing. The story means nothing. Only humans get moved by things that aren't real. And once you understand why, you understand something important about what makes humans genuinely different. To cry at fiction, you first have to be able to imagine what another person is feeling. You have to place yourself so completely inside another person's experience that their pain becomes real to you, even when it isn't happening to you, and even when they don't exist. That is the same cognitive capacity that allowed humans to cooperate at an enormous scale, to plan years into the future, to extend trust to complete strangers, to build systems that required thousands of people to work together without ever meeting each other. Empathy at that level, deep enough to feel moved by something fictional, is one of the most unusual things in the natural world. And crying might be the most visible proof that it's there. There is one more thing worth knowing. For a long time, in many cultures, men were taught that crying was not acceptable. Warriors weren't supposed to cry. Leaders weren't supposed to cry. Showing emotion publicly became associated with weakness in a way that became so familiar, most people stopped questioning it. But biology has always disagreed. People who suppress emotional crying for extended periods show elevated cortisol, the hormone associated with chronic stress. The stress chemicals that would normally leave the body in tears have nowhere to go. The relief doesn't come. The ancient Greeks wrote openly about men weeping. Medieval knights were described crying without shame. For most of human history, in most cultures, men cried. The idea that they shouldn't is historically recent. Evolutionarily speaking, it barely registers. What you were told was weakness has 100,000 years of successful human history behind it. You are the only animal on Earth that cries from emotions. For a long time, that was treated as a puzzle. A biological leftover. Something humans did for no clear reason that science couldn't explain away. It was never a leftover. The ability to signal need. The ability to trigger care in another person just by being seen. The ability to feel moved by something that happened to someone else. Even someone who never existed. These were not weaknesses your ancestors survived despite. These were the tools your ancestors survived with. Today, something is probably going to make you feel something. A song that catches you off guard. A memory that surfaces at the wrong moment. A scene in a film that lands somewhere deeper than you expected. And your eyes might fill for a second before you remember you're just watching something. That response is not an accident. It is not embarrassing. It is not a sign that something is wrong with you. It is 100,000 years of human history reminding you that you are not alone. And now you know why.